for coming and listening to this presentation. I think it's like, it sounds really boring, the topic, DeSci Standards and Ethics, but I believe it's an important initiative that I'm interested to kickstart to actually help DeSci to fix science. So my name is Etzrodt, and I work for the Akasha Foundation that builds decentralized social platforms and the framework for deploying them. But today I also speak for Blockchain for Science, which is an initiative that is around for quite some time. I think it's now 6 years. A group of nerds thinking about how can we use crypto and blockchains for science initially, and it has grown quite a bit. So there is a Telegram channel, Blockchain for Science, that I help moderating, and we had like 100 people on this channel for like 4 years, and last year it really exploded. It was really interesting, and then I said, wow, I should pay attention again to my own channel, basically, of the syndicate myself that we are running, and see that there's now over 1,000 people there, and it's a very interesting way to understand what's happening in the space. So if you're not on it, you can join. So we all believe that DeSci is a way how we want to fix science, but how can we do it? It's right now a lot of people chatting around and are very nervous and doing many things, but it's a bit chaotic. So the intention of this initiative here is to create standards for DeSci that we can all agree on. And I believe that once we have them, we can also establish a more solid funding base that comes through the crypto industry. So we are not waiting to necessarily have government support or trying to get nation states, countries on top of using what we are building, but we are rather asking the crypto space to help bootstrap all these great projects that you are doing. And when we have this, then we can experiment and iterate and really bring something new. So standards help to crystallize the strategic priorities that we have and to build then these new paradigms. We can use them to pitch actually to crypto projects that are working and that are interested in developing systems for public good funding, because science, the creation of knowledge, is a public good. So it is to me one of the very, very interesting opportunities for all these public goods projects to get involved. And then when we have this, and I will elaborate on this, or I will have several loops of explaining how I think this can work. When we have these standards, then we can help actually all the projects in the DeSci space to gain adoption, and also use this as a dog fooding to bring the users onto your platforms. So we all know science is broken. And there's always a discovery phase when this is a group of people discovers this. This is a phenomenon that happens over and over again. It's nothing surprising. It happens since science exists. People have seen limitations. So just to list a few of the things that the DeSci space is addressing, and this is just messy. I didn't want to go into it specifically, but just to mention a few. You know, we have a lot of DeSci projects that want to revolutionize peer review. They want to get out of this expensive publishing cycles. They don't want to use PDFs. That they are closed access. Data are being siloed away and they're not accessible. You have wrong incentive structures. Another example where people are keeping their data for themselves. They are publishing in a journal, and they're actually just trying to advance or secure their own career and all of these things. And it's very close. The system is not allowing a lot of those displaced scientists, or also grassroots bottom-up movements to be seen. But this is TLDR. There's a lot of things wrong, and it's not one thing that's broken. That's the bottom line. So what then happens is you have a science revolution. You have all these enthusiastic people like in the DeSci space, and the ones that joined the Telegram channel, running around and say, we will fix science and we are building this, and they are just jumping on doing one of those problems. And I have to say, and I will show you examples, these things have failed repetitively to actually achieve much. So enthusiasm was good, is there always, it's not enough. There's an example, open science. This movement popped up with a lot of projects all the time there, or there's a Center for Open Science now, we have for DeSci centers, foundations, and so on. You have data repositories, open access journals, self-publishing, GitHub for Science, shared lab infrastructure. There was the social web and all these kind of things that inspired a lot of those movements. What happened is, in the end, this is a startup incubator for publishers. So for those that have the money right now, what they did is they were looking at this ecosystem, and it's something that they found interesting that gained traction. They basically asked these people, so how long do you still have money? Oh, and then no one was paying them, so they were running out of money. Then the projects with user base were just acquired. So it's just the way this cycle works. And the European Observatory for Open Science by the European Commission actually is run and sponsored by Elsevier. So it's like run by one of the largest predatory publishers in the world. That's weird. So this got co-opted. It's also not good to just provide infrastructure and tech. And you can write a lot about what's wrong with science. This happened. Sönke Bartling, who funded, and I found him in the first month of its existence of Blockchain for Science, for disclaimer, this is a term he coined. He wrote a book, Opening Science, I think more than 10 years ago on this topic, and you see a lot of these articles exist. Also, this is not enough. And then let's have a look back in time. This is how a presentation looked in 2008. You see all these projects that were inspired by Web 2. Facebook was just becoming interesting, and there were publishers, there were like social platforms. Just one exists today, which is ResearchGate, but all the others were basically, drained of funds relatively quickly. There was Nature tried, the Nature Network, a social network by Nature. There was also open wetware, where you could like have a wiki style thing, and you could potentially share laboratory resources and equipment, because some people thought, oh look, there's this PCR machine and no one is using it, I could rent it. It's a failed, it's a broken system, and incentives, it doesn't work, because the science funding infrastructure today does not incentivize this. So we have a lot of redundancy. That's true, they identified this, but over and over again, these projects fail because it's just no incentive to really, or even means to let people use these laboratories. There are now remote labs, for example. This is another way it started to work, but these things failed. So 2018, when I became excited about this, you see there was a lot of projects. This was at the height of the ICO hype, and these were very well-meaning scientists that had not much idea about how to run a business, but they saw there's a lot of money you can make with these ICOs, and then you can build your dream. You can improve science. You can have a new journal like Science Matters, or you can build entire on-chain journals and so on. What happened there is that because they were diligent, as the scientists are, they spoke to lawyers first. Then they wanted to do raising money through ICOs. By the time they had paid hundreds of thousands of euros or dollars to the lawyers, the ICO hype was ending, and they have fatally failed. So a lot of sad stories about many of these projects for this reason. Or another reason besides the funding is that simply they were lacking adoption. And now we have DeSci, and so when Sönke and I saw this, we were like a bit shocked, because just 4 years later, no one of the DeSci people remembers what happened in 2018. They know maybe open science, but it was just 4 years later we have another big wave of projects. The question is now, what has changed? So the underlying problems that we want to solve and that are presented by DeSci are actually quite well understood. Yeah. So if you look at publications, we don't want journals necessarily, but we want micro publications that are dynamic, interactive, like Jupyter notebooks. You have a GitHub. You might have a reuse culture in science. You have smaller dynamic ways of working with these things. You want to have distributed labs or hubs instead of centralized institutes that are more open for anyone to access. You want to have a culture of real innovation, publishing of negative results as well, reporting on this, and being overall much more inclusive. So many of these things. So here TLDR, the DeSci revolution is here, it's happening, but this is not one of those things alone. And unfortunately, you cannot work on everything, obviously, so we have to somehow bring all these things together. So how do we do the revolution? So, and this is this very provocative statement that I published also on this Telegram group once. It's like, this time we will fix science because we can decide who gets the money and how to do science with it. So a very simple underlying thesis is, while before we had always to rely on grassroots movements to go to the nation-state funding organizations or foundations to convince them to give us money to survive in whatever cool open science project we want to do this time, there is something else. It's this ability to have communities that are globally distributed, but also they have a wallet address. And not only this, we also have a movement now that is backed by a quite asset-rich industry, let's put it this way. So there's a lot of money, and we see this public goods phenomenon emerging also as a way of seeing that this is there is an interest. And I don't want to make it too complicated. For me, the very simple thesis is there is a certain amount of the funds that are available as an excess, and that could be kind of as a tax, for instance, handed to supporting public goods infrastructure or project. And this is something that you see in the crypto space. So in very simple terms, to define this, you could imagine a crypto project saying we are building a wallet and 5% of the revenue we are making through the fees, we are dedicating to support infrastructure. We see this phenomenon now. It's of course important to fund the ecosystem that is the development of the crypto space. But there is the thesis of Juan Benet that we are going to reach a level of money around that would allow DeSci funding to reach the level of nation states. And this is something we need to prepare for now, right? And so the idea that then emerged is that what we should do is to bring all of these projects closer together to create something I would call it DeSci Commons. There's the example of Creative Commons that created this license. It's a little bit different in the DeSci space. I'm not having time to go into these details. You will realize if you think about it. But let's take this as an example. And we create DeSci Commons. And what it does is like Creative Commons, you have the CC BY license. And in this case, this is a license that wraps a legal code around having it there. And you are free to share and distribute and alter by just attributing. Now in DeSci, we would have a similar kind of label. We could call it gold and green or just pick another color. The thing is, it's a mix between legal code, possibly some technical standards as well, but in general, it's the label that identifies in which area, in which league we are playing. And then this is important. It's a neutral entity that shouldn't be like biased by any single funding source. There is an open doc. It's a Google Doc where we have iterated since a couple months different versions of how this looks like. You can scan it and have a look and contribute as well. Make comments, change the text, do whatever you want. And it's emerging. We have the history. Unfortunately, this should be on chain. Yeah? This should be like, or not on chain, but like on content addressable versioning or something.
We can do it on Gosh.
Gosh, okay, yeah, let's put this on Gosh. Good. And to just give you some ideas how this could look, so it could be two ways. Gold is for just the crypto native way of doing it. Green is to onboard also the traditional DeSci. There people in academic institutions need to publish in papers. So we keep that, but for gold, it would be full DeSci. You have DeSci network states, new kinds of decentralized institutes, and they are using all of these things I showed you on the table to how to do science. And then it would be a label that would say this project is funded through DeSci and follows open science and DeSci principles. So results are shared continuously through DeSci infrastructure. You have the FAIR principles that are applied from the open science initiatives, and it's a Creative Commons license, or you do IP sharing copyleft, which is interesting as well. You don't have to exclude the ability of making also, like, data secure in such a way that they can be in the legacy system exploited. Publishing, example, as I mentioned before, micro-publications, you have the CC BY, you have attribution through cryptography. What I mean is you are just signing with a private key. And then we came up with acronyms. There's FAIR, and our acronym is PROFIATS. So it's basically promptly open, findable, immutable, interoperable, accessible, decentralized, and maybe ZK on top. Whatever you can. Well, FAIR was fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. It's the FAIR principles, and nature does it. And it's okay. Working or not, you did not discuss details of it. Funding, you have new funding methods, and we need to explore them all. You can do quadratic funding, public goods funding, maybe hypercerts, IP, NFTs, DAOs. I don't want that the label is limiting or criticizing any of the different experiments that are being played right now with. This is not the role of this label. It just says this is all allowed with Gold DeSci. Yeah? And in Green DeSci, you will have people applying for grants and so on. So it's the strategy or the next steps, call to action is, it's like an hourglass. We start with all the DeSci projects to define and agree on the DeSci standards. So this is where we have this bottleneck right now that no one does it. No one thinks it's interesting. But we need to just once come together, do the DeSci standards, and have an organization that can evolve on them and have time for that. And for example, I don't have the time to do this, and so it needs to be we need to have some, maybe also financial support for such an organization. It would be really cool if you guys have an idea who could fund this, because we need manpower, someone that can really put their brain in doing this. And then after, we are expanding again. We have an expanding ecosystem of DeSci funders, and they are then able to apply the standards and support projects and scientists in DeSci. So every DeSci project should be on this and very interested in having this, because then we can really bootstrap the whole thing. Yeah, so that's it. Here are still the 2 QR codes if you want to join. And thank you for your attention.